Okay, in the pan we've got cumin, fennel, cloves, coriander seed. Got about a teaspoonful of each of those. A little bit less of coriander seed, 2 star anise, a couple of black cardamom pods, 3 cloves, some mustard seeds, brown mustard seeds. Just toasting the spices. The idea is to keep them moving around the pan. Coriander particularly, if you heat it too much it can go really bitter. All we're doing is just trying to release the oils. You can smell, our pan's quite hot and you can smell they're already just about done. Mustard seeds will start popping like corn, leave them in longer. But that's long enough. I just want to heat them through, release the oils, and then they're going in. Okay, using the spice blender. You can use a pestle and mortar, but this does a better job in much less time. I tend to use the ginger and garlic and chilli in the pestle and mortar, but this thing just whizzes the seeds up really quickly. Right, giving it one whiz. What you can see here is actually why I'm using this. All of the seeds are broken up. There's loads of little bits that you get in your teeth and wouldn't give the curry a particularly nice texture. I want to get rid of this. Pestle and mortar, you tend to get a lot of these things left, which is why I got this. The gadget was only about £10, quite expensive, and it saves so much time. Okay, in goes cinnamon stick and some fresh turmeric, some ground turmeric, which is straight out of that jar. You can get fresh turmeric, it looks a little bit like ginger, I guess, it's a root. If you can get it, use it, it's lovely. Just pound it up in the pestle and mortar with your ginger and garlic. Just be careful, don't get it on your clothes because it'll be yellow. Job done, that's what it comes out like. It's still probably the odd little bit, but nice fine powder. Okay, in the pestle and mortar we've got garlic, ginger and chilli, about equal amounts of garlic and ginger. I've got 5 cloves of garlic, so you can work it out. A couple of inches of ginger, I guess. And I've got 5 chilies. There's some pepper in there from before as well. It's all good. I'm just going to bash all that up with this. It doesn't matter actually for this recipe that this is bashed up too finely, because we're going to blend the sauce before we serve it and before we add the fish. But it's good to get it bashed up so that it cooks nicely. Okay, I've sweated some onions just down here, slowly on a low heat. I've just turned it up now, so it's finally starting to sizzle. This is where the sweetness in the dish is going to come from. You could fry these longer and slower to get them nice and brown, not toasted, but you can caramelise them. I'm just going to add brown sugar if it's not sweet enough because I haven't got time. We're going to throw in first of all the garlic, chilli and ginger mix that we've pulverised. Again, I haven't pulverised this too much into a paste because we're going to blend the whole thing before we add the prawns and the fish. So just pulverised it enough so that it'll cook through. There's plenty of oil in the pan, and the reason for that is when this curry powder goes in, I don't want it to go too dry. I want everything to cook nicely before we add everything else. So I'm just going to cook that through. Because of this dish, I don't want to burn the garlic. With the dal dish that I make, I actually want to toast the garlic a little bit because it gives a lovely flavour to the dish. For this one we just want to cook it through, I guess, get rid of the raw flavour. And then we can add the spices. Okay, so those are just sweated through. And I'm going to add the dry spice mix which you saw before. Now you can add garam masala to this as well, but I like to get my own combinations rather than relying on something someone else has done, because then I can learn more from what I'm putting in. And again, the oil here is just going to help this, stop this from drying out too much. I want to cook this through just again to bring the flavours out of the spices. It smells incredible already. I do think that a curry is a little bit like painting. If you throw all the paint in the one pot, you end up with brown. It's the same with curry. You've got to be delicate, you've got to be subtle with what you're adding and build the flavours rather than just chucking a bit of everything in. That way you learn which spices you like. Okay, so these are fried down a little bit, only for a minute or so, just to get all the flavours going. It's not quite on a high heat, it's on a sort of medium heat, so we're not trying to burn anything here. Just get all the flavours going through the oil and everything. Now, what I'm going to do, I've got coconut milk and tomatoes there, chopped tomatoes. The coconut milk has settled, and I'm just going to add a little bit of this coconut off the top and fry it in. And what I'm trying to do is just get the oils and the coconut to come out a little bit before we pour in all the fluids. Just mix it and it just kind of gets the flavour going again. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but all the mustard seeds that escaped the blending seem to be popping at the moment, which is a really good sign. That means that everything's mixing nicely at the right temperature. And then once that's done, you throw in the rest of the coconut. I'm going to put some water in here in a minute to get the rest of that out. And a tin of chopped tomatoes. And what this is going to give us once this is cooked down is a good base you can use for whatever meat or fish you choose to use. If you want to. Okay, while this is cooking, I just want to say a couple of things about what you can do with this. This is a basic sauce that we're making, kind of, I guess it's based on what you might call a korma sauce, although you start reading the Indian books, the korma in England is a mild curry, and this isn't going to be mild. It's more to do with what's in it and how it's cooked, but anyway, I'm not an expert on that, it's not relevant. Okay, what we're creating here is a base sauce. This in itself is nice. I don't know if you're a vegetarian, you throw in loads of veg and it's just about there. Once we've blended this together to come up with a nice smooth sauce, you can do a number of things. I've got another pan like this, and what I do sometimes is pan fry a load of chicken breasts, or sorry, pieces of chicken on the bone I prefer. Just fry them on the skin to render some of the fat out of them and give them a bit of flavour, and then pour this sauce over them in a big casserole pan and cook them in the oven for an hour and a half, 2 hours on 140 centigrade. The chicken comes out beautifully tender, and you've got a lovely chicken curry. If you're more of a lamb person, I would use shoulder of lamb, not leg. Leg is lovely if it's cooked quickly, but if you're cooking slowly, shoulder is much nicer. Primarily there's more fat and other tissue in the meat. That breaks down and gives you a much sort of lambier flavour, I guess, in your sauce, but it also comes out beautifully tender. So lamb shoulder for slow cooking. If you want this in a hurry, get some leg meat and pan fry it, or even make some kebabs out of it by marinating it for a few hours in chili and lime and garlic and ginger. Just marinate it in that and then cook them in the oven on sticks or something, and then when they're done, stir them into your curry, and then you've got some kind of tikka. That's what you can do. What we're going to do is put prawns in this, great big prawns that I'm going to butterfly, and I'm going to put in some haddock, which I'm going to cut into chunks, but it will totally disintegrate. And the haddock just gives a wonderful sort of sweet fishiness through the dish. You don't really notice the bits of haddock in there because, as I said, it disintegrates, but it gives a lovely sort of fishiness that goes really nicely with the prawns. Anyway, okay, I've got the sauce in a jug here. The pan's there, I'm going to use that again. I'm just going to blend it up to get a nice smooth sauce, and it's going to go back in the pan to carry on just simmering gently, and then we can start thinking about adding our other ingredients. Okay, so we've got a really nice smooth sauce now. If you taste this at this stage, it's still likely to taste quite sort of raw, pink coconut and everything. Tomato still needs to cook down a little bit. It's also likely to be quite spicy at this stage. There's still a lot to go in terms of the fish and coriander and things, and the flavours have still got to sort of mingle. So I'm just going to have this on a really low heat, just sort of gently bubbling away. This is quite thick as it is, so I'm going to keep adding water because I don't want it to reduce anymore. Okay, I'm actually using Thai jasmine rice, but you can also use basmati. That's probably preferable for Indian food, although there's not a huge difference. In there I've also added, I've rinsed it once, and then I've added about double the volume of water to rice, maybe slightly less. It's cold water, and I'm just going to bring it to a gentle simmer with the lid on a medium-ish heat, and then as soon as it comes to a simmer, I'm going to turn it right down onto low and cook it until the water disappears. In there we've got 4 or 5 green cardamom pods, a pinch of cumin, a pinch of fennel, a cinnamon stick, a couple of star anise, and some salt. Oh, and 4 or 5 cloves. And all of that's just going to cook through that rice and give us some nice Indian flavours. I'm also going to add just a little bit of turmeric, because that's got a nice earthy flavour. There's some in the curry, but it tastes different in the rice. It's lovely. You could add saffron if you want, but my wife doesn't like it, so bring it to a simmer with the lid on. It will happen a lot quicker with the lid on because less heat escapes. As soon as it comes to a simmer, we're going to turn it right down onto the lowest possible heat, which is actually going to be on the back ring, and then it's just going to cook until everything disappears. When it's done, it'll take about 10-12 minutes or so. When it's done, don't take the lid off, just leave it, switch the heat off, and let the steam just kind of do its thing. It'll finish off and the rice will be lovely. Okay, the sauce is just about there. I've just tasted it and added some salt. It's something that I don't like to taste the curry sauce until it's been cooking for a while. Invariably at this stage it tastes quite spicy and you don't get much of the other flavours. You need to add some salt, and then we're going to add a good handful. This is fresh coriander, which I've chopped up, stalks and all, and that's going to go in now. I'm just going to add a bit more flavour. I've done a very good job of chopping that up, some big chunks, but it doesn't matter. And it's just about starting to take shape. One thing you can add to this, if it turns out to be a bit spicy for you, if there's someone who doesn't like it too spicy, stir in some yoghurt, or give them some yoghurt to put on top of it on their plate. That way you can have it how you like it. What we're going to do, I've got 2 things here. I've got some haddock, which make sure you ask the fishmonger to take the skin off. It saves you having to do it yourself. I'm going to chop that into chunks, and here I've got some prawns which I've just cut all the way down to get the sort of the gut out, the vein that sometimes runs through it. Taken all those out, and I'm just going to throw those in. Also, by cutting it quite a long way down, it's going to cook a lot quicker, and while it cooks it's going to curl up like that, which looks nice. You can just chop this into chunks. My favourite curry house, the New Raj, they chop these into little chunks, which I much prefer to serving them with the tail on, because when you're eating it you just shovel it all in. Anyway, let's get them in. Okay, so the prawns are there. I'm just going to get stirred in, and the haddock's there. I've chopped it up into chunks, quite small chunks. So I'm not really too fussed about it staying together. I want it to disintegrate because the flavour that it puts through the sauce is absolutely wonderful. I'm just going to stir that in, bring the heat up a little bit, because there's a lot of cold fish going in there. So it's going to cool the sauce right down. We want that to cook through as quickly as possible. Our rice is just about there. Okay, so the prawns have been in for a few minutes. They really don't take that long to cook. The last thing you want is prawns that aren't cooked, but these will be done. The fish is kind of falling apart. There's little bits and pieces there. The smell is wonderful. And the rice is done. Turn the heat off, and it's been sitting there for a couple of minutes. Take the lid off and let you see. Now you can actually see when it's done, because it kind of fluffs up a little bit. Anyway, it's going to be lovely. And there we have it. And all we've got to do just before we serve it is put the last of this coriander over the top, and then it's done. And then you got, there you go. Wonderful. Job done.